Season's greetings to you, viewers of Afric Media. Welcome to join us on yet another exciting edition of the Pan-African Debate. It's on your Pan-African channel. This is Afric Media. A moment again for us to discuss issues and events affecting the African continent. Today, our eyes are focused on the Sahel region. We'll be discussing, very importantly, the decisions, or some of the decisions of the Alliance of Sahel States. Of course, we'll be discussing on the AES institutions and economic vision, whether they are engines of sovereignty or symbolic gesture. We'll be discussing that with our cream of panel this afternoon on Afric Media. Stay with us as we discuss the Alliance of Sahel States. The AES, born from the defiant exit of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger from ECOWAS in 2024, has rapidly evolved into a symbol of African self-determination. With a combined population exceeding 70 million and vast untapped resources from Mali's gold to Niger's uranium, the bloc's leaders, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Assimi Goïta, and General Abdourahmane Tiani, unveiled ambitious institutions in 2025. Central is the AES Investment and Development Bank, headquartered in Niamey, backed by a $5 billion initial capitalization from member contributions and sovereign wealth funds. Complementing it are mega projects such as the Sahel Airlines for regional connectivity, the Bamako-Ouagadougou-Niamey Trans-Sahel Highway, a parallel railway network, and a unified AES ID card and passport to ease intra-block mobility. Proponents hail this as lifeline for real development. The bank promises to finance infrastructure staffed by Western sanctions post-coup, channeling funds into agro-industry, renewable energy, and mining value chains. Imagine Sahel Airlines slashing freight costs from Mali's cotton or Niger's cashew, while the highway and railway spanning 2,000 kilometers plus on block trade corridors rivaling China's Belt and Roads. The AES passport set for rollout in 2026 could foster a significant or single market, boasting GDP growth projected at 7 to 10% annually by bloc economies. This isn't mere rhetoric. Early bank loans have already funded solar farms in Burkina Faso, powering 500,000 homes and creating 10,000 jobs. Yet symbolism risks overshadowing substance without rigorous execution. Critics point to familiar African pitfalls: chronic underfunding, corruption scandals, and the over-reliance on non-Western partners like Russia and Turkey, whose involvement rallies or raises debt trap fears. The bank's $5 billion pales against a $550 billion needed for full infrastructure rollout per AES own estimates. Political instability marked by jihadist insurgencies displacing 3 million divert resources from shovels to soldiers. With will the highway withstand Sahel's harsh terrains and insecurity, or become another white elephant like Nigeria's Ajaokuta steel? Unified passport sound visionary, but without digital infrastructure, a mutual recognition, the main language like the African Union's long-promised free movement protocol. If projects falter, the risks reinforcing narrative of African overpromise. Failure, however, would validate skeptics, as polls show 65% Sahel youths backing the vision. However, the Sahel's coming decades will test if these institutions drive prosperity or merely decorate dreams. Stay with us as we discuss these issues, the AES institutions and economic vision, if they are engines of sovereignty or symbolic gestures. Hello once again, thanks for joining us on Afric Media. Of course, we discuss on this day the AES institutions, whether they are symbolic or, of course, engines of sovereignty. Thanks for joining us and always being with us. We invite you to stay with us all through the program. We shall be giving you the opportunity to send us your contributions when the lines will be open for you during the program. Those of you following us on social media, on Facebook, leave us a comment. We have time. We'll read them here during the program. Thanks again for always joining us. Let's give the honor to begin with the only lady who is joining us this afternoon. She's a risk and security expert, Kiki Shodeko. You're joining us on Zoom this day. Thanks for accepting our invitation. Accept warm greetings from here and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kiki Shodeko. We equally have with us Metro Alex Ndive. You are a legal expert. It's a pleasure having you, Metro Alex Ndive. Accept greetings from here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on your program, and I want to send my warm greetings to the people of Cameroon and also to the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Metro Alex Ndive. We equally have counter-terrorism expert who is in the person of Mr. Otto David. It's a pleasure having you, Mr. Otto. Accept greetings from here.
Thank you very much for having me. Greetings accepted and returned. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. We have here with us in the studio is Mr. Tagia from Hong Kong. You are a civil society actor and you're joining us live here in Douala in the studio. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Tagia.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure for tackling this very important topic for me. I hope you're going to be useful because it's good to try somewhere. However angle we are going to tackle it, it's good to start somewhere. So, late Merry Christmas to my co-panelists and all our viewers all over the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tagia, and thank you equally for those of you watching us. Welcome once again. Can the AES Investment and Development Bank and other planned projects drive redevelopment, or are they mostly symbolic? We'll be talking on that this afternoon. We begin with you, Kiki Shodeko. You've been following keenly. I know you have a lot of interest in what is happening in the Sahel region, especially following the coup d'etats and, of course, following the break from ECOWAS by Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And today we're talking about the alliance of Sahel states, the AES today, and there are several projects which, of course, are on pipeline. What's your overview so far since 1 year today? We're talking about 1 year since the break from ECOWAS. What's been your evaluation on the performance of these three nations in the Sahel region? Kiki Lomo.
The truth is that I don't have a performance index to measure the performance, but I think
just from an overview of what you've been observing as compared to
I completely understand. I was just stated an opinion. But nevertheless, you have to give kudos to them in the sense of when they took that decision a year ago. I know I'm one of the people that believe that it won't last long, right? I was one of the people that believe that it won't last long due to the fact that it's one thing to make that kind of decision, is another to be able to back it up with actions. But thus far, it seems that they're standing strong. This is a year in and they're still pushing through. So we'll see how far it goes. But on all the information concerning what they've put in place, it is not a new framework. The framework has always been there for Africa in general to have something like this, to have cooperation, to have a link between ourselves, amongst ourselves, freedom of movement across borders. It's not a new thing. It's not a new framework. They're just using what is on ground to activate what they want to achieve, okay? So it's not a new thing, I will say it again, but what they are trying to do is activate it. Basically, it's good that it's on paper, but activating it is another level we need to get to. And as we all know, ECOWAS had talked about the trade relations that was supposed to happen all through the borders. Even before AFTA came to be, those relations were happening, right? Those relationships were happening across the borders. So it was expected that when that was going to be put in place, it will actually bolster it. But thus far, it seemed to have killed it. That's what I would say. Nevertheless, pointing to what the team is doing, that is the three countries are currently doing, yes, they are just using the typical framework that has already been put in place. But what is important is, as much as their goal is to create the relationship and bolster it amongst the three countries, they should not neglect their countries internally. Now, all we need to understand is that we need to learn lessons from people that have collaborated. Always learn lessons. Don't make the same mistakes others have made. What do? Okay, great. You formed an alliance. Fantastic. You formed it in spite of the criticisms. You formed it in spite of the claim to power. You formed it in spite of your coup attempt to get to where you are going to. Fantastic. You've done that. Okay. Now, the next thing you are doing is strengthening that relationship. Fantastic as well. But what is important is, as you are strengthening this relationship on the surface level, it has to deepen into the lives of the people. That is the most critical thing. I would not call it a symbolistic thing. I would rather call it is a start to what should actually happen down the pike. So, fantastic. They've started it. I will say that there are a lot of lacunes still happening. For example, it's typical that people that have taken over via coup certainly will not be relinquishing power anytime soon, which will be a problem down the line, because they are not the only ones that should be, quote unquote, be able to lead the country forward. That's one aspect that will be problematic down the line, and it will create that same cacophony, that noise, that need, that opposition that should not have been there in the first place if they are willing to relinquish power. Okay, if they are willing to change. So what I would just say is, thus far, it seems that it's going fine. It should get better, but it will get worse, because eventually oppositions will rise when it seems that it is only these guys that seem to think they are the only ones that can bring the change to their countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kikulumi. We got that clearly, and the issue of relinquishing power, and we'll be discussing that, of course, shortly. But then, let me talk with you, Maitre Alex Dive. Kikulumi talks about the fact that the AE is already working on established frameworks, but then we have modern institutions like the African Union, which has not been able to achieve what we are seeing the AES achieving in just a very short time. The ECOWAS as well has not been able to achieve what we're seeing the AES being able to achieve within this very short time. Do you think it's just a matter of just the institutions being in place, or what do you see the AES doing different that the African Union has not been able to do, or the ECOWAS has not been able to do, vis-a-vis what we're seeing materializing in a very short time?
Listen, what we are seeing, to me, is not rocket science. And as an African, to me, it saddens me when I sit here today. You ask me, when was the first pipe-borne water in the United Kingdom? 1613. When was the first public electricity in United Kingdom? 1881. When was the first underground train in US? 1863. Industrial Revolution, 1760 to 1740, Industrial Revolution. Why I'm happy with these guys in Sahel is that they are telling us that what I've been saying all along, we are not independent. Every day we celebrate Independence Day. And independence means you have to be sovereign. We use the word sovereignty, territorial integration in Africa. I understand, yes, as the ladies said, Gaddafi was trying to do something like this. Other people like Lumumba, blah, 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 in Africa, we've often tried to do something. But however, these people, they gave us, we call it political independence, but not economic independence. So to me, what they are trying to do in life, before Marco Garvey, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Obama became president, people always talk and talk. And I just want to hope that these guys are the ones who are going to deliver. And we should not make mistake. To be an African leader, when you believe in Africa, if you're patriotic, it's not easy. Look at Sankara, what happened to Sankara. It's not the only one. These guys, we don't have a nuclear weapon or what to protect ourselves in Africa. So I sit every day, I pray for these guys. I said they should achieve what they want, because if they should achieve it, it will revolutionize the entire Africa. When you see what they are talking about, having a bank, their objectives for what? Increase regional trade. I used to ask myself, if I can sit and trade with Nigeria, South Africa, why should I be going out of the continent? There's something we study in economics, comparative cost advantage, which in Africa, if you know, South Africa is good at constructing of vehicles or what, give it to South Africa. Nigeria is good at this, give it to them. But we have not been able. We just copy and paste in Africa because they are saying that what? They want to eliminate Western influence. They are telling you that we are not sovereign. They want financial sovereignty, increase in industrialization. Sometimes we make mistake in Africa. We think industrialization means having an industry. Industrialization means stop using your hands and start using machines to produce more things. That happened in 1760 to 1840 in Britain and other European countries. So to me, I know it's a difficult task. It's very easy for me to sit and criticize these guys because we always want democracy. It's kind of unfortunate that I will tell you on your program that sometimes I love benevolent despot. Because when you look at most European countries, the people who constructed Europe were what? Dictators. Democracy only came out. Democracy is just about accountability, transparency. But if we are patriots, democracy can never develop a country. It's when you have people who are patriotic to develop their country. When you ask, is it symbolic or is it going to happen? The things that these Sahel countries they want to do, it's not rocket science. They talk about investment bank. They are already investment bank. We can copy the same thing. Investment bank is about raising capital, issuing stocks and bonds. They are there. I presume Africa should be leading in the stock market, all those things. Commodities that they sell in the city of London and all, in New York, wherever, comes from Africa. So we haven't got an established capital market in Africa. You have what? What do they do? Investment bank, merge and acquisition, advising companies, buying and selling, merging businesses. They can do it. Sales and trading, buying securities, what they can do what they want to do. It is not rocket science. Financial advice, researches or what, that's what they do. And to me, if Singapore and Qatar, all those countries, they can do it, why not us? Africa had the first university on earth in Morocco. The first university on planet Earth was from Africa, Morocco. And so when they say the mother of all continents is what? Africa. So sometimes when we sit, we talk like baby. I say, we should do more. We have the capability, the capacity to do more in Africa. If you look, we have our resources. We have, like the Sahel country, they have gold, uranium, iron ore, agricultural product, limestone, copper, other things. So what do you need to do? You need, for more than 60 years, taking into consideration the so-called independence, for more than 60 years, we have what? Can't we train civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, chemical engineers, people who will transform our product? Those are things that are possible. But to me, the reason we have problem is that our colonial masters, they don't want us to be independent. And we need bold people, like the people in the Sahel. We need people like that because people have tried to do it like, as my sister said. But sometimes you try, Kwame Nkrumah, they kill you. Lumumba, they kill you. And now, we pray that these guys should live to realize their dream. Thank you.
Need brave people like those in the Sahel. We're talking about Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, of course. You say we need more people, of course, like that. And taking into consideration the past and those who were there before, probably, of course, killed. Now, let me talk with you, counterterrorism experts, Mr. Otto David. The security situation in the Mali, Burkina Faso was quite a big challenge before now. I'll be starting with you with regards to the fact that you're a counterterrorism expert, and I know very for sure you might not have the particular data, but then what's your general overview with regards to the situation in the Sahel before and now? Can we rely on the security, a positive side of it. We look at the number of projects which these different countries want to realize, like the highway, the airline, all of these, and the security situation on ground. Do you think it could be possible?
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's very clear from a security angle that you cannot achieve any economic development when you're struggling, from a security angle. And, one has got to take into context that the creation of the Alliance of Sahel States in September 2023, the declaration of the Liptako-Goma Charter, was as a result of the pressure which ECOWAS at the time was putting on Niger, regarding a possible military intervention. And so the birth itself of the Alliance of Sahel States as a mutual defense pact, equivalent to NATO Article 5, was as a result of the level of insecurity. But behind that as well, and before that, you have military juntas at the time who took power, citing mostly the level of insecurity that the democratically elected governments at the time were unable to deal with. And this was one of the main reasons why they came to power. They talked about the fact that the governments in place, did not have the right strategy to deal with the level of insecurity. They were too close to the French colonial masters. They were unable to deal with the economy. So insecurity has always been at the as a headline in terms of how this alliance was created. So principally, it was created as a defense pact, and then of course it then expanded to look at economic and other political areas. So it's now more or less what they describe as the one people, one space, one destiny, kind of an alliance. But if you want to measure the level of insecurity then and now, you would see that, of course, there is, little data to demonstrate this, but you then realize that there are still a lot of areas to be covered. In terms of consolidation, I believe that, by establishing the Alliance of Sahel States last year, they have been able to consolidate. They have been able to, take themselves away from ECOWAS. So you now have a full-fledged regional body, which, is quite young. So in terms of progress, one would say that it would be quite, unfair to judge them, because they're very young, but very ambitious as well. So one cannot really, if you want to compare them to the likes of ECOWAS, which they left, you cannot really, it wouldn't be fair to say that, there has been less progress. But if you look at Mali, for example, with the current level of jihadist expansion, the likes of Jenim coming across, and especially having a serious impact on the fuel blockage, which, has a lot to affect, in terms of the economic lifestyle of the people of Mali. You can say that that is an area where the alliance needs to deal with. We know that they've established a 5,000-man, united front, to deal with the level of insecurity, but that is still, again, still very new. We are not yet clear in terms of what strategy is going to be put in place. But my understanding of this alliance is that it is always good to, do what I describe as a strength from within. And what that effectively means is that for the alliance to be sustainable, for it to have a longer lifespan in terms of, its objectives, there has to be some kind of internal considerations by each country. So strength from within Niger, from within Mali itself, and from within Burkina Faso. So you've got to have that internal national sovereignty before you can have the regional component. But what the alliance has done in an emergency, what I describe as a 911 situation, is that they've started from a regional strength, which is by creating this alliance, and they are now moving towards an internal or national strength. But we're still yet to see the fruits of their objectives. Remember that these countries are still using the CFA. They have talked about a common currency, which is still yet to be fully implemented. We've seen the projects that they've put in place to increase the GDP, but all this is still in the beginning. And as my co-panelist said in the beginning, that these are all very good things on paper. We've seen them before. They are the same ambition that ECOWAS has. But I think, for me, looking at the alliance, what would be important is to see how they develop these, ambitious projects that they've put in place. If they do achieve that, and I hope that they should, and for the sake of Africa, if they do achieve that, we would see some improvement. But I don't believe that simply by changing partnership, by leaving the US or France, or by going towards Russia, that's not sufficient. I think what would be sufficient would be to see the fruits of these changes that they are making, and to hope that we would have some development. But in my experience, there is no level of development that can survive in an environment where there's insecurity. So they have to deal with all these issues, but I believe that they will by some grace. The biggest problem that I see with this alliance is when power changes hands. So if, for example, the move from the leaders that are currently in place to some form of a democratic system, maybe they change governments, is this going to be sustainable? The next generation of leaders that come from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, are they going to maintain this alliance, or are they going to simply walk away from it? So that's where I see some level of fragility coming in place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otto. David, thank you very much for that. Now, Mr. Tagia, you got Mr. David Otto just from what he said. Now, the actual fact is the ambition of this alliance is actually very high, and the issue of leaving France to probably go to Russia is one of the key issues, because here, I know you talk a lot about the impact of France and what France does to most of these African countries. France was there before, and now they're turning to Russia, and we're looking at the level of development and level of ambition and the level of sovereignty they are trying to acquire under partnership with Russia. What's your appreciation?
Well, when you talk about France, Luis, I just got a visa refused to go to France, and friends, some friends warned me before. It doesn't change my thinking. Yeah. But I have to talk about the issue. As I started saying at the beginning, we need, and didn't say IAS need to start somewhere. This country, Mali, Burkina Faso and all, Africa needs to start somewhere. Yeah. That's what I'd like to say first to start with. I'm very optimistic. I don't mingle with the world optimistic about the bank coming in. Let's remember this is not a commercial bank. It's a bank of investment and development. Right. And that is, if you look at all the African countries, apart from some now, if you're moving up like South Africa or maybe Rwanda and all, we don't have so many of these banks. In Cameroon, I remember we had something like that coming up, like the bank for the small and medium-sized enterprises. But one mistake came that I'm going to talk about. It is that actually, and one of our panelists talked about that, the expertise. They took a very good person, a fonctionnaire, a civil servant that was at the Ministry of Finance, and put him at the high of that institution. So it didn't work. I want us to go back to something, and as the first panelist explained so well, this not Africans, we have been used, we like very, very much rocket issues that, we put it on and it works the next day. No, it doesn't work like that. We are talking of of an issue where you have predators that have been building what Africa is suffering during hundreds of years. That is 400 years of slavery after 100 other years for colonization. They sat down, sealed it in between November 84 and February 85 in Berlin, and it is moving on. We don't expect to see human beings, because don't forget that what these three countries are putting on, you have these same predators sitting aside and say, we will see if you can make it. So it will be, for me, very poor for an African mind to join that kind of belief. Because when you look at the story of France, they suffered the same thing, but one day they came out. When you look at the United States, they suffered the same thing, and the revolution came, and they came out. It doesn't take 2 days, it doesn't take 3 days, it doesn't take 4 days. Maybe the best example talking about that is the BRICS itself. For how long BRICS has been talking about an issue, coming up with a currency that's going to fight against the dollar, and they're working on it, and it will come out at its own time. So these things do not unfold the same at the same day. But let me just clarify my point by attacking the issue through two angles. What these countries are going to face are in two angles. You have problems from within, internal problems, and they will have to face external problems. And my co-panelist is talking about security, really attack the most important problem, which is security from out. And all of us, we have to recognize that only talking about ECOWAS and all what Mali mostly had been suffering for years from an external donor saying they're going to come and protect them. How far did they protect them? What they have done so far is far more success than what had been going on for years by France, for example. So, but let me talk about the internal problem that, for me, is the issue that they will have to tackle most, and I think they are tackling it. They are tackling it because when you have the will, finally, the will is going to bring out something. Talking about the internal problems that these countries are going to first face in search of, in the vision of this important bank of development, the first one, I think, is to put in place governance and managerial a system that is objective, having the expertise to handle that. When I talk about the governance, I talk of we are talking about their partners. The three countries are partners. Okay, so at the head of all of them, they are going now to put a system of management that counts, that works from expertise, not talking about the sentiments, emotions. Is the son of the president, is the son of this or that, of the personality in any of these countries. That's, for me, the most important, talking about the internal issues. Because that's how any bank starts. If they are looking for having a central bank one day, that's how they should start. Now, when you look at from where they are coming, they are looking for funding the bank with 5%. Of the fiscal system of the three countries, and 0.1, a levy of 0.1% of any import coming out from the countries of the IS. This is something that Africa has been trying to avoid for years. Why? Because people above there look at mostly egoistic way to look at it. I take a simple example. You have people in the same country that are moving with a fleet of cars, valuing the value of how a city can live on, as they can live. Mm-hmm. You just need to levy these people, and that gives some good funds to work on levy. So 0.1% from all those imports that come out from IOS. That's going to foster the development from within, bringing the IOS countries to work from within, creativity to move on, the youth to work for hope, women to work from associations that work from within. I don't see why it is not possible. And it's true, they have been trying to raise this 500 billion CFA, let's say $900 million. And it is going on, and I believe they can make it. This is a possibility. This is something possible. It's not to dream about. Now, if you look at it, as I said, the predators, that is Europe especially, they took years to put in place a system that we don't just expect them to come and put off the next day. The CFA, for example, it's normal. It's going to take their time. But definitely, the way they are taking it up one day it's going to work. And the most important is that they want to stand as an example for other African countries to stand and know that they can face it. Because for so many years, our predator wanted to build us with that mind that tells you, you can't. Only us we can give you. Donors are only us. No. And for some long time, don't expect it's going to be next year, even 2030, where you are not going to talk about the donors. No. And I don't think they have put anyone, when you follow all the speeches, they are not putting France away. That's what people need to correct. They want they accept partnership from any country that respects their sovereignty. Because for how long we have been complaining against the African Union. These guys, we complain about them, and on this African media, we have been saying the same thing. The problem is not them. Someone cannot come and give you what we call in Cameroon, in Bamileke, Arian Cap. Someone cannot be giving you money and dictate to you how to use this money, and you go and use it otherwise. It's impossible. So at the end of the day, whatever cost it's going to take, this should be done. So as I started saying, they need to start somewhere. So that's the issue when you talk of internal problem. Now if they put good experts to manage without going to emotion that has been a problem for Africa for all the time, I don't see why it should not work. Now let me just learn through the external problem, because as I said, you have external opposition, you have internal problem that are going to come. Externally, the issue of security that my brother has developed so well. The issue of security is central since they decided to come together. Has it evolved? Has it been better, or was it better what they used to be? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. If they are better, I don't see why that should not work, because that will be the main problem. Since all these predators, they are sitting, watching, putting into place all kinds of design to let Africa say, see, you see, it can work. It cannot work. You need to be with us. You need to carry other 100 years with us. And every single African mentality has to back them. I know many sit down and talk about democracy. That if I had time to spend time with, people need to understand that Africa knew democracy long time before the white man came. Our chiefs were ruling with the closest, were working on the base of democracy. Just like when you go to Athens, when Greeks, they invented the democracy, they were following their own culture. Britain is just on that same one, like an example. So let not people sit and say, since this guy didn't come by the hand of democracy, it cannot work. It cannot work. I believe that every African mentality has to back them, fight for solution, suggest solution, and then get these predators away and stand on the same table with them, sitting in that table, not knowing that the money we have to come and sit on that table, we have our own money backing us. I said, I learned through it. I'm from the human rights. You know it yourself. What Europe has been trying to do, but now these three guys are going to put as an example at the Declaration of the Human Rights that happened in 1949. They made sure that they put Africa apart, that we know nothing about that. France, mostly, that has been heading the International Monetary Fund, and the US in the other side for the World Bank. We can't expect to work with these guys if we don't stand by ourselves. So again, as I said, it is good to start somewhere.
Okay.
We have to start somewhere.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tagia from Hong Kong, civil society actor. Thank you very much. We got you on that. Now, back to you, Kikilo Moshoneko, risk and security expert. You highlighted, or your fear was that if these Sahel leaders, when they refuse to leave power. On the other hand, for Mr. David Otto, he says he fears if power changes hands, will these institutions and these ambitious projects be sustainable? Now, with regards to power changing hands, and with the fact that we understand that when power changes hands and when probably issues like democracy and opposition starts coming in, do you think we'll be able to sustain such institutions if power quickly changes hands? Kikelomo Shodeko, can you hear me?
Yeah. So yeah, I can hear you. So
Okay.
it is a major problem. So what David has done is bring another aspect to it. So yes, there might not have been an opposition, but there was a seamless transfer of power to another group of people. It's a two-way street. So a seamless transfer of power. So the question will always be, would these guys have the same hunger? And what we're going to look at when we look at it from that angle is say that people's ambitions are different. What might bring this person to power is different from what brought the other person to power. As we know very well, the military always claim that the reason they are coming into power is because they want to come and get things right. The military always have this sense of grandeur that they are the only ones that can make things right, especially in Africa. They cannot get the attention of the people. The only way they know how to do it is with their guns. I totally do not agree with that way of taking over power, because what happens with that is you have the weapon to silence people for a period of time. But after a while, people will wake up to the fact that, okay, yeah, whatever legitimacy you have is dependent on us at the end of the day, right? If you're corrupt, it doesn't make sense that the military took over. If you're saying the civilian people that took over, they were corrupt, so that's why we, the military, took over to make everything right, and you end up doing the exact same thing they did. So what was the reason in the first place? So like I said, if there's a seamless move of power from this group of people to another group of people, ambitions are different, their manifesto will be different. In general, I bring this into our consciousness. I remember on The View, when Kamala Harris was running for presidency, and as we all know, she was the vice for Joe Biden. And she was asked that question, what would you do differently as the president of the country? And according to what was seen, people, the reason people didn't vote for her was that they felt like she was just going to continue from where the president was going to stop, and they didn't agree with that. And it goes the same way. So as much as the military are in place now, and it seems like everybody is in support of everything, don't be shocked that not everyone is truly in support. And all it takes is for someone that is running as a candidate that is going to be transparent, that is going to be getting the power to say, oh, I will just continue from where these guys have stopped. And someone says, no, that's nonsense. They didn't do the right things. We need someone that will change things, So those are the factors in place. So let's not forget that ambitions are different. People have their set goals, and they might not generally just be in tandem with what these guys are currently doing. When they do take over, they will run with their own show. Now, for me, the other side is always the side where the opposition has to rise to fight back, quote unquote, the power. So in this case, I am talking about the fact that these guys, in the sense of their grandeur, they believe that they are the ones that can change the country. Fine. And thus far, if we want to measure it on face value, we'll say, okay, they're in the pathway of doing that. Okay. Yes, they started doing some constructive things that look familiar and will eventually yield result down the line. And as David said, we shouldn't judge them so quickly, which is what I said. It's the performance index in just a year down the pike is too short, right? Nevertheless, when those oppositions begin to clamor that, guys, you cannot hold on to power, you are as messy as those guys that you took power over from, then the chaos begins. So the same thing we're trying to avoid from the beginning, it comes back, and it becomes a cycle. And that, for me, is my issue with how we run the power play in the African society. We are so self-centered. Our selfish interest takes the pole position from the reality that is on ground. I mentioned again as well that internally, we need to deal with the things that are wrong with our situation internally needs to be sorted. Yes, collaborations are fantastic. I'm a big fan of collaborations. I'm a huge fan. I love it because the scripture is clear. One can chase 1,000, two can chase 10,000. Now imagine 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. But to be able to bring in your own strength, you have to have strength in the first place. And another person has to bring their strength, and you combine it, and guess what? You will do great things. But the moment we think that we don't need to take care of our backyards and we just need to come and collaborate, we're going to get into trouble. I will say it again. We can't make the same mistakes others are making. They've seen the prototype of what the AU has, of what ECOWAS has, and it's not working. I can say for free that Francophone Africa has UMOA. UMOA is working. We might say the CFA is based on the France CFA, the Francophone, the French money, but it is stronger. It's stronger than most African currencies. It is working to an extent. We can see that. We can see that I can move my money from Benin all the way to Senegal, and my money is still valid. Wherever I go, I can use it. I'm not under the constraint of, oh, I have to change money again. Makes a lot of sense. And it has worked thus far. We are seeing that with the combined economic strength of one country is helping another country to remain stable so if the franc CFA is $1 to 1 franc CFA in Benin, is the same in Senegal. Fantastic. That is a prototype to look at and apply. Makes a lot of sense. It is good. But I will point it out again. The problem we will have down the pike is the moment people feel stifled. People feel like they cannot speak up. People feel like they are doing the exact same messy situation that has happened in the past, and they feel like they need to change them. So the moment people say, we need to change these guys, they've spent the time that they should be here. They are not changing anything. They just made a whole lot of noise in the beginning. Yes, it seemed they were in the right path, but all of a sudden they are in the wrong path. So we need to change them. Then the opposition rises. And that's where all these other countries that we say get involved with our politics begin to have people they can pay to create an uprising that causes chaos. We saw what happened in Senegal. An opposition man came into the presidency, and guess what he wanted to do? Run for a third term. Imagine the insanity. So he wants to run for a third term, despite the fact that he fought to become the president in his own term. So these cycles are there. Can we try to change that as Africans? I'm not. The maître, he talked about a benevolent dictator. Fantastic on paper. But when the reality sets in, we can see what the woman in this country is doing right now. Fantastic on paper. A benevolent dictator looks great on paper. Yes, you give to some people, you do well for some people, it's fine. But the moment someone raises their voice, you say, no, you cannot speak because I'm the one here. Then we have absolute power will always corrupt absolutely. So I would suggest that these things need to be considered. Let us begin to build structures, and not structures on people, but on let the structure be solid, so that when anybody is flowing through, for example, just like David said, there is a seamless transfer of power. As that structure, there's a flow. Let that flow remain in the sense of, this was what we were trying to achieve. Mr. New President, Mr. New Governor, Mr. New Territorial Head, whatever you are, this is the pattern we want to continue with, so that we can continue with the growth. We see that in Botswana. We've seen this thing work. But the problem we will have is the cycle of self-centered, selfish people that believe that they are the only ones that can get things done in our beautiful Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Kikilo Moshideko. You're talking about building institutions and building structures, building stronger institutions. Metro Alex Nzive, do you think strong men will build strong institutions? And do you think the military leaders we have currently, and in contemporary Africa, you look at Africa in the 21st century, do you think democratic leaders could be able to have this courage which we're seeing the leaders in the Sahel demonstrating right now? Do you think that a civilian authority can be able to perform all of that to achieve this Pan-African dream or this Pan-African vision which we seeing these guys are achieving right now? Strong men can build strong institutions, or do you think strong institutions first before building strong men? What's your take on that?
Well, sometimes in Africa they have choked us with what they call democracy. We are choked. I understand the lady talk about benevolent despot. Benevolent despot is somebody who uses the institution for the benefit of the people rather than personal gain. So you cannot compare that with, is it Tanzania, with the woman. We are obsessed about democracy. I love democracy too, but to be honest, if you look at Western democracy, democracy was created by Homo sapiens. One, who was Oliver Cromwell? He was a general in UK. He took over from the monarchy in order to bring a foundation for democracy. A general. You go again to France, General Charles de Gaulle fought to liberate what? A general, a military man, to set the foundation. In America, another general, George Washington, fought again to bring democracy there. So we should not take this issue about democracy. We think everything, at the moment, we have seen ever since the reintroduction of democracy in most African countries, it is not working. What we need good men. I presume people who understand, when we say benevolent despot, they are despot, but they are working for the interests of the people. You cannot have strong institutions without having people who have that savoir-être and savoir-faire on how to create that institution. So it is very important, because I understand the lady was saying that, oh, France CFA, if you go, is working or whatsoever. Before France CFA, we were doing trade by barter. And personally, the way I look at things, I would even prefer to go back to trade by barter than to be using a colonial money. France CFA originally was called, the money was called that France CFA, Colonie Financière d'Afrique. It was signed by General Charles de Gaulle in 1945, a presidential decree. Why should we be using this colonial institution? If you look, in most developed countries, whether it's in Asia or wherever, yes, they can use Western system, but they also maintain their own system. If you go to most of these French African countries, École Normale, which is from France, all of them, Sahel country, they have École Normale Supérieure, ENAM, they have it, Gendarmerie, they have it, Institut Pasteur, they have it. So you cut and paste a foreign institution and put it in Africa, it cannot work. That's what we should know about that. At the moment, I don't like to use this word transitional. I don't care about democracy now in the Sahel. We have had democracy, which is election. In Africa, democracy is just about elections. There is more into democracy than just election. Accountability, transparency, that is it. We need more of what we call economic development, because it's important. I understand the lady talk about that we should look about the internal issue of the country. Who created these countries? Who created the entire, what you call countries today? We were Africans. We were not this country they call today different countries. So we should be looking on how to integrate and to come back together. If you look at European Union, they started coming together. It started as an economic union. Now it's political. They have a single currency. They are trying to come back together. And they set out certain criteria, what? To guarantee democracy, minority right, rule of law, human rights, and other things. They said something. But if you ask, what is European Union? We don't know what's European Union. It was Organization of African Unity. To me, that was okay. Now we have just copy and paste European Union, African Union. Who is sponsoring African Union? The Europeans. So my point is we should come out from this. My sister there was talking about, oh, as we use France CFA is okay. Why is it that is the treasury in France, in Paris, that is managing your money? We in Africa, can we not manage our own money? When my sister talk about France CFA, do you know what is monetary policy? All those African countries, they don't have a central bank. You cannot exist as a country if you don't have your own central bank. Even France joined what? The European Union. They are using the euro money. The euro, they have what? A central bank. France still maintain La Banque de France. That's their central bank. But we, in most of those French African countries, there is no central bank. France is managing your money. You cannot control your monetary policy, which means The money supply is determined by France. Growth is determined by France. Devaluation, inflation by France. So what is your Minister of Economy doing in Africa? Nothing, because France determines your economy. We cannot pretend that we are a sovereign nation. Okay, the exchange rate, there is more in your money than just, oh, the money is strong or whatsoever. If you should give me a choice today, I'll be more radical than the leaders of the Sahel, because I will say, let's start doing trade by barter today. We should do it. We should sacrifice. These leaders, I hope, they're trying to bring institutions that are going to work. That's what is important at the moment. We cannot sit. We have seen, ever since the so-called independence, we have seen democracy. Democracy is only about election. And who are the people, most of the people who are presidents in the African countries? They are still what? Colonial puppets. I've never seen in an African country, you cannot call and say you want to see 2 prime ministers in Europe. They come to one African country. But they will call 54 presidents in Africa. You will see them in Moscow. They will call them, you see them in China. You see them in Commonwealth, Francophonie. So listen, at the point in time now, we have to liberate ourselves from this colonial system. Let's keep that insofar as we have good leadership. I believe, I don't know Mr. Traore personally, but he's a good man. We need good people. Let them set the foundation. In Africa today, we say, oh, Senegal, they have this democracy, but we don't know. Senghor set the foundation in Senegal, which Senghor was what? He's somebody who practiced democracy. He was a minister in France. He was a parliamentarian in France. He came and set after Senegal had its independence. So most people are surprised that Senegal, the changed president, is because there was a foundation there. When you go to other African countries, we don't have that foundation. And if we want to look about integration of Africa, to me, I don't believe in most of these colonial boundaries. The West, they cannot come here and separate tribes in different parts of Africa. This tribe is there, and the same tribe there, we call it countries. We should look in future to see how we can start reintegrate bit by bit, and Africa should be one country in future. Maybe it will take 50 years time, but we should look at these things. To me, I don't buy at the moment. We should not be talking about democracy in the Sahel. There are people who are there. I don't know how long they have been there, maybe 3 years. Some people, like Cameroon, where we come from, one person have been a president for 43 years. If you, these people for 3 years, I can say they are achieving more than Mr. Biya of Cameroon. So let's give them that chance. We don't want to talk about opposition now. I like politics too. I would have liked to say, oh, I want to be there. These guys, they happen to be there. They have a plan, and their plans are quite clear. They want to stop Western influence. They want to stop colonial money created by General Charles de Gaulle. They want to do something for Africa. That's just 3 years. Most African leaders, some of them have been there for 40 years. They have never had this plan. So if we want to stand against these guys in the Sahel just after 3 years, then we are the problem. If we have persevered to support other African leaders for more than 40 years, then 3 years is not enough. For this guy, to me, they have achieved a lot in the sense that if you look at what they are talking about, increase in industrialization, joint investment in Africa, financial sovereignty, control over our natural resources, economic autonomy, and to trade among themselves. So this is we might say other people talk about it. I know Gaddafi alone was talking about it, but Gaddafi had 40 years to do that. Gaddafi would have done that if he wanted. Gaddafi was changing the goalposts. But this guy, they have come under a confederation, which is a good step, which means they have relinquished certain powers to come together. If you look at United Arab Emirates, it was made up of approximately 9 different countries. They came together, they relinquished power, they created United Arab Emirates. So if these guys, they are military or not military, they have good ideas, and we should give them that chance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Metro Alex Ndive, you believe that the leaders should be given that chance. Just like statistics show that about 65% of young people in the Sahel, they're actually in support of what is happening, of course, there. Now, let's talk with you, Mr. David Otto. We'll be looking at the fact that the Alliance of Sahel States have ruled out a common identity card and a passport, which of course is going to go operational in January 2026. We talk equally about the common currency, which of course is still in progress, and the aspect of open borders and the issue of insecurity, which is still an issue in the Sahel, considering the vastness of those areas. What do you think an open border or a free movement or biometric passport is going to mean? Will it pose any security concern from your evaluation?
When countries speak about establishing a common ID card, in the case of the Alliance of Sahel States, the Confederation, and talk about common passports and a free movement, that it's the basis of a regional integration, and identification. And again, I mentioned the fact that the whole idea behind the Alliance of Sahel States, has been expanded to reflect that these are one people. They occupy one space, and therefore there shouldn't be any barrier to their movement, and they have one destiny, which means that they all have the same objectives, and this is the foundation of a narrative which I believe will have a serious impact in terms of how the people within these states see this alliance. So you've got to develop an ideology, and this is what this is all about. The establishment of an ID card to identify people and a passport to travel, and an open border for trade to be able to be carried out, for people to move from one country to another without seeing the difference, is the basis of a decolonization strategy. I do remember that Military Alex spoke about the fact that African countries were one continent before the unfortunate situation of 1884, 1885 in Berlin at the time, which divided the continent amongst different spheres of influence from the West. So from an internal point, I believe that the challenge that they would have is one that perhaps they could be able to establish a strategy to deal with that, and that strategy would be along the lines of establishing a common security architecture. I know that the Alliance has proposed a 5,000 men to fight against insurgency groups, the likes of ISIS and Al Qaeda and all sorts of other groups within this alliance state. The idea for that is to ensure that when there is a common border, each country can be able to deal with these non-state actors, from within their countries, but also along the border states. So, from an internal point, and when I say internal, I'm referring to the point of the alliance. There are measures that they are putting in place, which includes this counter-terrorism force. But then you still have to look at issues within national security, and I'm talking about law enforcement, border management control systems that they still have to establish. What drives away insecurity is not just about declarations of common ID cards or a common border management system. It's all about governance. Are the people within the country, do they feel that they belong, within the governance space? That is going to be quite key for these states to be able to reduce the level of people that feel that they're being disenfranchised within the country, people that feel that they're being marginalized. They have to deal with all these, what you call soft interventions in order for them to succeed in effectively rolling out this common identification, common passports, and freedom of trade. Each country or each region that has common movement, if you talk about the European Union, for example, has a challenge, and that challenge is often, around border management. So, for example, in the UK and in France, you have, this issue of illegal migrants moving from the UK through the tunnel, and into France and vice versa. But that is as a result of freedom of movement. But they have established systems in place to deal with that. So, from my perspective, I think that having these systems in place would be quite crucial, but they have to be developed. That means the Burkinabés have to come up with an effective border management system. The Malians have to do the same. The Nigerians have to do the same, especially along the Liptako-Goma triangle, where the three countries meet. I think they have to establish a common border management system along those lines. That is the only way that they will be able to, from a regional point, have an effective system that manages both intelligence sharing mechanisms, response mechanisms, and crisis management mechanisms. So I think they do have to establish all that. The problem with the current architecture, as I call it, is that it's still fairly new for the Alliance of Sahel States. So it will take time. Right now, there is a lot of work being done to consolidate power, because of course there is this issue of transition. People are asking the questions of when are they going to, hand over? When are they going to transition from the military to governance? Those are some of the things that are still hanging in their minds. As long as they haven't consolidated their positions, so making it clear how long they intend to rule for, this is going to be something that is constantly going to be a pressure point for these leaders. Just the fact that they haven't declared what their plan is, from a governance point. Are they just running as leaders for life, or are they planning to hand over to other military counterparts, or are they planning to annul elections altogether? What system of governance are they planning to establish if they do not want to continue with a democratic system? There has to be some understanding in terms of how they wish to continue. So even if you build all these alliance systems in place, you establish a joint counterterrorism force, you establish common borders or development and investment banks. At the end of the day, when countries or other countries want to invest in your country, be it regionally or externally, they will ask some critical questions. And those questions will be around sustainability. How long are we dealing with these guys for? What system of governance are they planning? Are they staying in power as, dictators or benevolent, whatever you want to label them as? What is the plan? So this uncertainty in terms of what governance is going to look like in the next 5 or 6 years, or maybe in the next 3 years, is something that they have to address. They have to be clear in terms of what their plan is from a governance point. Are they staying in power, after taking power? How long are they staying for? What is the plan? As long as this is not established, very clearly, then, whatever measures they put in place, from investment, development, common border system, establishing a common monetary system, there will still be a challenge that rests as to people not knowing, or countries not knowing what will happen next when it comes to governance.
And thank you very much, Mr. David Otto. And the AES Development Bank, of course, aims to finance or to be a lifeline for redevelopment. Of course, the bank promises to finance infrastructures which have been starved by Western sanctions. Now, we'll be seeing how far, of course, that bank can go. But then, Mr. Target, when we look at the aspects of the AES wishing to have a common currency, do you think it's going to actually make them very independent, or do you think they're still going to be dependent on maybe countries like China or probably the BRICS? What do you think a common currency will mean for the Sahel states?
Well, the question, I will reframe it in this way. Nobody is really, no currency today in this global world is really like independent walls to itself. It's all dependent. Looks.
Well, we'll compare it to the France CFA.
Right. Yeah. Of course. Let me anyway start by coming back to that. But I just wanted to mention a central issue that my brother just developed. He was talking about that central issue of sustainability. You see, what is going to take Africa, and I think that our lady at the beginning also talked about it in a way, what is going to take Africa really ahead is to put in place institutions that keep that sustainability. I want to look at that side of sustainability. You'll not see that it is democratic countries that have put on powerful, strong institutions that go ahead, above the emotion or personalities or whatever, or individuals, whether they are democratic or or not, as in the case of some people complain about, it's a military directing these three countries, whether or not. I want to look at it deeply on what can build on strong and sustainable institution. Look at really patriotism. I think that these guys have shown in a way how they love to see a change. In a way, they are not fighting for the individuals, because we need to always go back to the base of democracy. Democracy is what? Democracy is the good, the bigger amount of people living, having a good life, or let's say having better living conditions, and that's what the base of democracy is. Not democracy for the world democracy, because whether you spend 40 years, as someone was mentioning about the case of Cameroon, or you spend 5 years, if you are building something that gives better living condition, you are building a strong country. For me, that's the most important. It's at the base. It's not to stand on the word democracy itself. That is to say, when you talk about majority, as has been killing so many, also in the churches, talking about democracy, God himself is not democratic, by the way. And is it to do the good of people, or to respect the word? And then to go deeper in the Bible, even Jesus talked about it, saying that the word, democracy has been created for the good of men, not men for the good of democracy. Standing and say, we have been democrat, but you don't see any development coming on. So having given some more weight to that point of sustainable institutions, on that the most important for me, I'll go back to something that we really need to talk about. You see, everyone is saying Europe, and the old traditions and all what they've been talking about, bringing modern life to the world, that has been all fake. You can see it in their own. And someone talk about falling institutions in their own, that they try to come and implement to us. And I will take an example. I even mentioned ENAM, that we found in all the francophone countries, École nationale d'administration. A falling institution. France itself, and that's the good example is France. They had what they call ENA de Paris, that has trained so many. École nationale d'administration de Paris. Why did you see the Gilets jaunes doing so much what that they did in France? That was one of the base was that issue of ENA, because French people themselves, the medium class and the lower classes, they discovered that these guys trended. They had no clue of the problems of French people. They couldn't get the problem. That was an elitist system that was building on administrators that know nothing about what the Frenchman is going through. And that's why the Gilets jaunes, and one of the successes of that Gilets jaunes was to delocalize ENA with new structure and all. It is now in Lyon. Not to say that it has fallen, that the old institution of ENA has fallen. And they bring us ENAM. Once I had a program on one of our major television in Cameroon, Equinox, and I said the ENAM of Cameroon will have more success when they send the student in the farms. When they go on moto, as I saw in Benin also, the motorcycles, let him sit and be driving people, suffering, seeing what people are living, rather than going and sitting and learning all over the 5 years to tie to put a tie on, and not knowing what people are going on. So he really mentioned, and I like it, bringing in Africa falling institutions. And that's why the United States, America is really like, just like a boy and a girlfriend and all this, going to Russia and all this. Because Europe is falling. We don't have to bend on them and say that, okay, the France CFA, you can take your France CFA, where will you change the France CFA? No, it's up somewhere. And my brother talked about something that they call truck. Before the money came, we had truck. It would be better for us to take our wood and go and say to the Mercedes-Benz, you give us this amount of Mercedes and we give you this amount of truck. Let us go back there. Let us not look at short-term benefits as if I take the CFA, it's not going to go far. Let us go back to the rules. Go back to why the money was just created. Money itself is not. It doesn't have any value. It covers a value, and we have values. That if these values are not meant on our own gold, and these areas they have their own gold where the money is going to be associated with. So there's everything is ready to do that. So again, as I come back, we don't have to rely on falling institutions that are going to bring Europe backwards to what they are talking about bringing modern life to the world. No. The next thing I would like to talk about is opposition. They created a word. Why do you don't have that word opposition in France? Why do you not have it in England? Why do you not have it in Spain? And all this. They created a word called opposition. And say that what I said is cannot work. So I keep on fighting. That's another way. One of the objectives that they put on in Berlin between November 84, we know the dates. They are known all over the world. And February 85. Make them knock their heads. And all we have to add to that the tribalism that we suffer and all this opposition. Opposition comes from where? We are building the same country. We are not standing to oppose one to each other. And now, I will end my this intervention by talking of that copy and paste that my brother said. He developed it so well. I don't want to really take the weight of how he developed it. It was so wonderful. We need to get on ourselves and know that to start is not easy. It isn't easy. I remember in 2007 when I decided to resign from the Cameroon Public Service, where I was promised a post of director, either director or sub-director. All my people, my family understood, you cannot work for so many years. And I said, no, if it's under this term, I can't work. I remember I had a little Mercedes that I brought from Europe. I had to sell it, and I was trekking. We have to start somewhere. It's not going to be easy. But gradually, if these guys have what I call the main trait that any African leader should have, I'm not, whether Democrat or not Democrat. If you ask me what is the first main trait, the second main trait, the third main trait, I will say the first one, patriotism. The second one, patriotism. The third one, patriotism. When you see that seller of banana tree going on the street, suffering, and you feel what she's suffering, having no shoes, who has gone and does all the education that you ask her to do. She did it with confidence on those people governing her. At the end of the day, neither excel or even this one. They are lost in the system. Me, I went to the university when the scholarship was given. Today, these poor young people, they have to pay. And they pay, and at the end of the day, they have nothing to do. Because we have to reduce all our education, what we call that CFA, we have to do it all over again. Because that education hasn't been made to help them. It's been made to serve our colonial masters. We need to get out of it. You have more than half of the youth in Cameroon, the country I know very well, that have nothing to unemployed. Because we dream of it, we have to rely on a currency that is going to take us. No. We need to start somewhere. And starting somewhere is hard. Even if we don't benefit, others coming in years to come will benefit. But we need to start somewhere. You can't be sitting and someone is printing your money somewhere. You can't be sitting and not hope in any central bank and talk about going forward somewhere. You are going nowhere. I need to make it very clear. African people, we need to get educated to understand those things, get out of lies that they came and mold us on, and get out of these objectives that they sign, seal it in Berlin, to make sure that we carry on that. We need to get out. And getting out, young lady, young man, it's going to be hard at the beginning. You will stand somewhere and they'll tell you, you are not in no problem. I prefer to go back. And we do it all over again, and we can go somewhere. So that's how I'm going to learn. Say it's not going to be easy. Definitely, it's not going to be easy.
For sure, of course. Thank you very much, Mr. Chagia. And we'll get back to talk with you, risk and security expert, Kikilome Shodeko. Briefly, I want to find out, just before I come back to you, I just want to remind those of you watching us that if you want to participate and tell us about the AES new vision, and of course, you want to tell us about the AES institutions and the economic vision, and what you think about all of that, send us a call. The number will be on your screen. Call us on WhatsApp directly. We'll be glad to pick your calls. And of course, let me talk back with you, Kikilome Shodeko. We'll look at the Alliance of Sahel States. We look at Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Do you think these nations have been able to inspire other nations? Or, in other words, do you think they are being isolated, considering the fact that, of course, we know they're still under sanctions? Do you think they have been able to inspire other nations with regards to what they are doing? Kiki, I don't know if you can hear me from here.
Oh, yes, I can. Sorry, I didn't unmute. Okay, so I don't know about them inspiring other nations. Of course, they're inspiring individual African people because any form of fight, pushback against anything that is seen as oppression and suppression by the Western world is very much appreciated by the people. I don't know how much it is really impacting on countries. If it will, eventually, maybe some African countries that are trying to swim, swim above the waters. But I think they are really exciting the individual African people because, as far as people are concerned, they are a group of people that are showing some sort of, ability to push back. So that ability to push back is always a welcome development amongst people in general. Because they feel that they are fighting for the African pride, as the case may be. So concerning nations and countries, I don't think so. Maybe I would like to see maybe a country that finds it very exciting to have. Oh, I may say, okay, considering that most of our panelists are Cameroonians, I think this excites the people of Cameroon more than, say, for example, people from Kenya, for example, right? So yes, individual African people are excited about the idea of a group of people pushing back. But when it comes to countries per se, I don't know how much of an influence this decision is. Maybe Cameroon, because Cameroon is going through it and having to have a president that seems not want to leave at all. And it's not like Cameroon is changing or getting better for it, So yeah, it's it's very difficult to point out to a particular country that might be inspired by what the AES is doing or might be interested in joining the AES. I can actually also add that countries, for example, that coups are occurring in, or there are plans by the younger officers to take over government, might be interested in something like this because they see it as a way to consolidate their power. You know, it's a group that you will fit in if you come off as fighting the oppression of the imperialists, you know, as the case may be. So you will fit in perfectly because all you need to do is take over power, and after taking over power, pretend like you are all against the suppression and oppression of people from the outside world that are trying, the colonial people, and then they're open arms. They'll say, "Come join us." It doesn't matter if everything is all based on your self-centeredness. So I think those are the people that will be inspired, or thus far inspired by this. Thank you.
And for sure. The situation, of course, in Francophone Africa is different from the situation in English-speaking countries around Africa. And, of course, we had recently leaders Pan-Africanist meeting in Lomé, Togo, to renew Pan-Africanism. Maître Alex Dive, from what Kikilome said, we might not see this happening, you know, as we're seeing in Francophone Africa, but the aspect of young people trying to, you know, preach Pan-Africanism, trying to embrace Pan-Africanism is quite growing rapidly. And a lot of people, a lot of Africans today, of course, many want their continent to be sovereign from Western grip. Do you think what is happening in the Sahel is a way to go?
Well, to be honest to me, if you ask me to pick between the Sahel and the African Union, I presume I would choose the Sahel because the African Union is a Western puppet and they are not there for the interests of African countries. If you see, they have double standard. If you look at the Constitutive Act, somewhat their constitution in African Union, it says if you make a coup d'etat, they will not accept it. But you can make a coup d'etat in Gabon, in Chad, it's okay. But when you make a coup d'etat, whether it's Benin, what you don't like, it's not okay. So it's double standard.
Double standard.
So that's the problem with, when I look at it, African Union is obsolete. They should dissolve it. Organization of African Unity was better off than that. So if you have a genuine, I always set you up, the Europeans, they always have good institutions. The European Union was not just about all European countries. There was a criteria called the Copenhagen criteria. You must meet what? Guarantee democracy, rule of law, human rights, respect of minority. But African Union is just African Union. You bring all the dictators there. European Union was not about all the European countries. They start bringing people bit by bit. You must meet this standard. So when we talk about Pan-Africanism, I would prefer this Sahel. They should start Pan-Africanism, good governance. If you look at the Arab countries, most of them, they are what? Monarchy. But what? They have something they call a social contract with their citizens. Extensive largesse. They give them subsidy, free education, free health. Let me tell you, if there is a scale of preference today, you ask most people in African countries that do you want democracy or do you want free health, free education, free subsidies, and to create jobs? They will go for those things rather than just saying democracy. Democracy in most African countries is just election. That's how they look at it. So to me, Pan-Africanism, I believe if the leaders in the Sahel, if they could get their way, that is the beginning. And African Union and other people, they should make sure they go and join this the Sahel country, because African Union, to be honest, they are working for the European Union. If you ask, how come that the European Union, they are the one sponsoring African countries? It's strange, because the European Union, they are the one sponsoring, the African Union. So it tells you that he he who pays the piper calls the tune. That's what is happening in our continent. And when you go again, there's something which I found which is so, I've talked about it before, which I find it so very, very delicate, because if you come in Africa, this is what we have. You see, like when we come in France CFA, it is France that manage the money supply. Do you know what it means to manage the money supply of a country? It means you're not independent. France can decide what to do, how to print your money, how to put the money in the market, or how not to put it. It is France. And we say we are sovereign. Credit supply, it is France. When it comes to what? Control inflation or whatsoever, devaluation, it is France. When it comes about promote stability and growth, it is France. So how can you allow, because to me, when I look at monetary policy, it is the heart of any country. So if you take your heart and give it to another country, it means you cannot leave. That's how we are in Africa today. Because most countries, like in us in Africa, we don't have our own country, whether it's China, most Malaysia, other countries, Arab countries. They bring their own culture, then they take certain Western part, they include it or not. But in us, Africa, we have relegated our own tradition and custom and embrace something that doesn't work for us. It's just like we don't have, is it winter in most African countries, most majority, but we embrace winter in Africa. That's what we are doing. There are certain peculiarities, there are certain differences in Africa that we have to accept our own. Then we look at the good things, whether it comes from Asia, whether it comes from the West, but we have just accepted 100% Western culture in Africa. If you ask Chinese, they have their New Year. Do Africa have a New Year? No. Other countries, they have their religion. Do they follow their own religion? I don't think so. No. So we, Africa, we have to believe in ourselves, even if we have to bring foreign things in Africa. So that's the trouble. We just talk about Pan-Africanism, but we have to look, what is Pan-Africanism? What do we have in common? How do we bring this thing together? What is a time lapse? And generally, the lady keep on talking about, oh, people want to rule. At the end of the day, as things stand in Africa, we have been dancing to the tune of the West. And I wouldn't mind, we have stayed for how many years, more than 60 years in so-called independence. I wouldn't mind to spend 3 years, 5 years, 6 years to give some people, although I don't know them personally, a genuine chance for them to try something else. We have tried the Western culture for more than 60 years. It's not working. It's working in the interest of the West. If you see where they print our money in most African countries, in Europe, they are creating employment for their own people. We don't look at those things in Africa. And if you look at the things that they do, can we do the same thing in Africa? Yes. And at the end of the day, it's about patriotism. Because if you ask me to choose democracy and patriotism, I will choose patriotism. Because patriotism is love for your country. And if you love your country, you're not going to allow your country to sink. So that's what's important to me. Yes, if you're patriotic, you love your country. If you love somebody, you cannot let the person to collapse. It's a fact. So you can be a democratic country, but you don't bother about the love of a country. You can be a Democrat, you don't love your country. If you're patriotic, you love your country. So let's start with patriotism. Then democracy will come at a later stage. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Maitre Alex Ndive. And like we told you that the lines are open for you to call us and share your thoughts with us, what you think. We have indications of call online. We'll be glad to hear from you. If you're there, let us know. Hello, good afternoon. You're live on Afrique Media. The program is a Pan-African debate. Can we get your opinion? Are you there? Hello and welcome to the program. This is Afrique Media. Can we hear you? All right. We will definitely come back to that caller shortly. Let me talk with you, Mr. David Otto. Thomas Sankara, a lot more Kwame Nkrumah were unalive because of their ideologies. And when we look at the recurring insecurity in the Sahel regions and in most countries in Africa, many believe it's tied to the presence of natural resources, and many call it the mineral curse, which of course we know most of this insecurity is sponsored by the West. Of course, most of those who benefit from the chaos, the mineral resources that are present in these countries. When we look at the ideology and the actions of the AES, do you think, or what's your long-term analysis? How far can they go when we know that their actions will no longer be benefiting the West? What do you see as their future?
Well, I think first of all, we have to, agree that fundamentally the AES is not developed as an anti-Western regional bloc, or an anti-Western alliance. They're established, themselves, as a protector of regional sovereignty. So simply because they speak against the French imperialism, against the French control, does not mean that they are against France. It means that they are for the benefit of African countries, and what they are looking for is not that they will not engage with the West, but that they want to engage with the West in a way that is beneficial to their national development. So I think clearly that distinction has to be made. Simply because someone is speaking for their development does not mean that they are speaking for the development of another country, or simply because they are speaking for the alliance of Sahel states doesn't mean that they are speaking against France. So while that narrative can be very suitable to a lot of Western media, that because an alliance of Sahel states has been established, it means that it is against ECOWAS. That's not, that's not very logical. I think the logic here is that these countries, have come together, irrespective of how they came to power, which some people would disagree and some would agree. I think what is important now is what are they being established for. And in my opinion, they seem to, at this juncture, they seem to be heading towards the sovereignty of the states. Again, I continuously mention the fact that they talk about one people, one space, one destiny. So they are looking towards the autonomy, and for these states to be able to do business with the region, for them to be able to establish ties with other regions based on mutual interest. So I think this is very, very crucial. The Alliance of Sahel States, as it stands, we all agree that it is still a very new entity. It is still at the very level of development. What I want to see as an African is to see what the roadmap is, how the roadmap looks like in terms of sustainability. How are they going to achieve the development that they've put on the plan? How are they going to achieve economic sustainability, political independence, political sustainability within the region? How are they going to achieve a level of security? Bearing in mind that a lot of African countries do not have their own national security strategy in place. A lot of the systems that these countries are still relying on, the training programs are established on the doctrine of Western approach, and then so they've got to look at that as well to see how they can be able to change those narratives. And this is why it's a lot easier for African countries to be exploited, from a security point. All the systems that these governments are using, the technology that they use to operate. Unfortunately, these technologies are not established by them. They do not have full control of this technology. And this is why, if you look at the level of insecurity within the region, you would immediately identify that even the weapons that are being used, both by the terrorists or by those who carry out insecurity within these countries, but also by the governments that fight against this insecurity, all these weapons, are coming from external parties. So Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, for example, and all other African countries, don't have yet established the capabilities to develop their own defense architecture. And that means that even when you want to defend your sovereignty, you still have to rely on external parties to provide you with intelligence and surveillance capabilities. You still have to rely on them to develop your security architecture, to give you planes, to give you drones, for surveillance and intelligence. You still have to rely on them to provide you with training. So all these capabilities, when it comes to security or fighting insecurity, we still have not seen what roadmap that would look like. So, for example, if you look at the 5,000 man defense forces that have been established by the Alliance of Sahel States, don't be surprised that these forces, would be trained externally. The equipment that would come from external parties. So the question here is, yes, we want to see that level of Pan-Africanism, but what is the plan? And I think this is where Africa needs to begin to think very seriously about developing in-house or what we call continental capabilities. Look at how you can establish mechanisms, structures, industries that would lead to a level where you can be security independent. My experience with a lot of African countries, even when you look at their strategic communication, the systems of communication, emails, mobile phone usage, as simple as that, means of transferring money, all this is still based on systems that are linked to external parties, and that does not in any way provide you any level of independence. So the environment in which insecurity flourishes within the continent is very complex, and in order for that to be reversed, then you've got to look at a system where these countries, even beyond the Alliance of Sahel States, African countries have to look very deep into how they can become security independent before they can be able to handle the level of insecurity that exists. Because, there is no home that, can survive when some of the rooms are on fire. And, irrespective of whether these sponsorship is coming from external parties or internal parties, the fact is very clear that as long as you don't own your security architecture, you don't have the expertise established in-house to be able to, to develop a national security strategy, you don't have the infrastructure to develop your defense capabilities, you still rely on external parties, they will always have a much more advanced, copy of, what you have in place. So in my opinion, I think what we need to see within the African continent, and I regret to say that this is something that, unfortunately, the African Union seems to be unable to promote. We need a system whereby cooperation is important, but independence is maintained. Look at, for example, the case in Nigeria, where the United States, carried out an airstrike against ISIS. Of course, this is something that the US had threatened to do, making Nigeria a country of particular concern. They've carried out this airstrike. They were the first to report it in a sovereign state. You can't imagine that Nigeria did the same in the US. Then, all hell would break loose. But the point I'm making is that, African countries have to be at a level that not just their political or economic independence is key, but their defense independence has to be very, very crucial. No country wants to mess up with you when they know that you have the capabilities to retaliate. And this is why in geopolitics, countries like North Korea, China, Russia, the United States, the UK, and other powerful countries worldwide, they are feared, because of the level of defense mechanisms that they've built. As long as we don't have those kind of countries within the continent, we will always remain vulnerable, and vulnerable from within and vulnerable from without. So for me, my advice to the Alliance of Sahel States would be for them to look beyond, relying on one external party against the other, but to develop a system that would demonstrate a defense independence. But it will take time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. David Otto. You're a counterterrorism expert. Thank you very much for that insightful discourse. Now, we'll talk with Mr. Tagia. What Mr. David highlighted equally had to do with the fact that the Alliance of Sahel States, what they want is autonomy. That's what we equally realize that most African countries want right now. They want autonomy. And this autonomy will mean a total control over their natural resources and all the rest. And this is not going to benefit, as it used to be, to the West. Imagine, in Niger is not going to definitely benefit France as it's used to. And now Niger takes total control of it. Mali takes control over its goal and all the rest. And now the West no longer benefits as it used to benefit. What do you think is going to be the long-term implication? And do you think the West and those who are benefiting are just going to let it slide, or what should we be expecting?
The answer is obvious. The answer is obvious. We need to understand, as I keep on saying, these are not going to be easy battles. You cannot have a country like France that has been exporting energy in Europe, been anyway even the first exporter of electricity, and the mineral they use does not come from France. They have been having it so cheap. You don't expect France just to sit down and see the things change from one day to the next. This guy is going to be very hard battle. So for me, the question is straightforward. It's not going to be easy. But one thing I would like to point out is that this IS country, they need to sit and really list now, because the devil is better than it's always getting a solution when you list all the problems you have. It's not easy. It's not going to be an easy battle. Now, talking about the security, which is for me really fundamental, of course that side also, these guys, I think that they are thinking about it, and there was no doubt that even the fundamental, this is one of the first issue, the security, because what they are doing, so many enemies, not only including talking about Europe, you have the United States and all this, they have been getting it so easy. And suddenly, imagine like Congo standing there and they've been feeding the gold, going, the diamond and all, and suddenly you say, no, you're not going to take it that way anymore. Well, even you at their place, what are you going to do? You are going to stand and fight. But for the issue of insecurity, I don't think that there's anything like we need to be pessimistic about it. Today, I consider the world as Socrates himself said one day when someone asked him, where do you come from? He could have talked about his own country from when he come. Socrates said, I'm the citizen of the world. I'm a citizen of the world. That's how I look at those things today. With this globalization issue, no country is again like put in one corner, being alone. It depends on the partners. And I think that Russia has played such an important role on that angle. Sometimes without having even a tangible presence in the place. Sometimes having a tangible presence in the place, like in the Central African Republic, the tangible the other day, but only the image of Russia makes all our predators think it twice before they move. Seeing what Russia is doing in because what people maybe don't know is that Ukraine actually is the first probably in Europe for the underground riches and all this that they own. When we talk about that material, I forget the name now, that you use in batteries and all these, first probably, what they call it, is 60% reserves and many of these. So all is about the riches and what you have. And now, Africa, we always like to take things easy. Like we have been using the money, let us carry. No, nothing is easy. It's not going to be easy. And we need to fight long-term battles. Because we always like to see the things next day. Being ready. No, the battle is going to be a long-term battle. But we need to start somewhere. So definitely to answer your question, let us not expect easy solutions. Now I'll come back to talking about security. I don't think that these guys, they're not thinking about that. They are thinking, because this is fundamental. They need to put down some basic plans how to keep, because when you talk of security, you talk about there are some secrets that need not to get out. And now when you are depending on some foreign power, whether they are Russians or Americans or France and all this, if he's the one providing, giving you those security gadgets or whatever plans put on, he knows already, because he has been the one to build. Just like on the side of the currency we've been talking about, the CFA and all, they need to get out. But all this is going to take its own time. As I said again, being patient, because the brakes with all the power they had, and they're going to put it on, they're going to put the money on. But they are to stand against the dollars, but they are taking the time. These things do not come from one day to the next. We need to be patient. Okay. But I think there's a good example that they have taken, and also maybe if you allow me to land by saying that this is not new. Africa was one before they came. It's not that. It's nothing new on that angle. Now they came and divided us. We are going to go back together. There's nothing. There's no interrogation about that. We'll go back together, and we are going to do it. But we need to start somewhere.
We need to start somewhere, and we need to go back together to be a united and strong Africa. Sovereign nations. I'll end with you, Kikilome Shodeko. Definitely, like I just asked Mr. Tagia, I'll be posing the same question back to you as well. With regards to, do you think those who are benefiting from the rich mineral resources of these countries who are now claiming their sovereignty are just going to let go? Do you think they're going to fight back? And do you think what should we be expecting in the near future from those who were benefiting totally from the rich mineral resources of these countries who are now probably or want to be completely sovereign and independent? Kikilome Shodeko.
Yeah, certainly we already see that happening. So one thing I know that these countries know how to do is find those who align with them. So they either find those who align with them on the same thought process, or they use monetary gain to get that going. They've done it before, they will do it again. It's not a new, so what I want everyone to understand is it's not a new pattern or a new way to get people to kowtow or do the things you want. Even politically within Africa, people do that. For the American people, they call it lobbying, but they will find a way to push back. If they don't push back with individuals, they push back with creating more chaos in those spaces. So it's not a new way of doing things, but it's expected that they might even bring in people, just like we're looking for expertise to come and teach, and they might bring in people and say, oh, they are experts, we are just trying to help you, and use that as, an entry point. So there are different ways in which they can infiltrate to keep. It might not be as total as they want it to be, as it was, because as far as I'm concerned, these countries are learning to peg up all those holes that allow them entry in the first instance, right? So they might use other methods to get attention and to create that kind of link that has always been there. It might not be as much as it was before, but it's expected that it will still be there. So forecasting, there will certainly be pushbacks, and the pushbacks might not look as it usually did, but it will eventually come. We'll start seeing those cracks here and there. And typically, like I told it will start as most likely an opposition. So an opposition can begin to rise that suddenly has so much money that they can oppose what is currently ongoing. And all you need is the right set of media pushing a particular person, raising concerns about the imprisonment of people. So the same way it has always been, it will be. But nevertheless, as much as I am always against a way in which they take over power, I always want us to win as Africans, because if we don't run our systems today, when will we begin to? So that's the note I'll put it at. We need to begin to run our systems, because I know we have not just potential, but the capability and the capacity to run high-level systems and, help the whole of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Kikirome Shodeko, risk and security expert. We very much appreciate you for that. Equally appreciating your time on today's program. Just before we go, we have a last call online. We could not get your calls, but we have someone online. Hello, good afternoon. You're live on Afrique Media, the Pan-African debate. Your time on today's program. Just before we go, we have...
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes. What's your name? Where are you calling us from? Give us your contribution. We can hear you.
Good afternoon. You're live on Afrique Media, the Pan-African debate. Good afternoon, Mr. Alias.
Yes, of course, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. What's your name? My name is Divine, calling right away from United Arab Emirates.
Okay. All right, Divine.
Yes, sir. Yeah, sir, I wish to contribute that the Sahel region, they are doing something very good as compared to Cameroon and other parts of Africa. Because if you compare their national income when Traoré took over, that was 2022. It left from 18 billion to 22 billion dollars. That's a great difference. So we wish that other African nations should join them so that we can fight together, because freedom is being seized. Nobody can give you a freedom except you seize. Thank you.
Okay. Nobody can give you your freedom unless you seize it, and that's what many African countries are, of course, now doing. I want to thank you very much for being part of the program this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. David Otto. You are a counter-terrorism expert, Mr. David Otto. It was a pleasure having you on today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. David Otto. Mr. David, can you hear me? All right. Unfortunately, we cannot get the feedback from you. And
yes, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and thank you to your guest, but also to my co-panelists for the wonderful and very knowledgeable exchanges over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. David Otto, counterterrorism expert. Mr. Metro Alex Ndive, you are a legal expert. It was a pleasure having you on today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Metro Alex Ndive.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's interesting that after more than 60 years of the so-called independence, we are still talking today about having our autonomy, self-determination, elimination of Western influence, joint investment bank, increased industrialization, economic autonomy, and so forth and so forth. But the truth is, necessity is mother of all invention. We have reached that stage that we have these challenges, and challenges fuel innovation, which we understand. And I believe there is hope for Africa. And where there's a will, there's a way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Metro Alex Ndive. Where there's a will, there is a way. Mr. Famokong, it's a pleasure having you on today's program. Thank you very much for coming. You're a civil society actor.
Thank you, Luis. It's been a pleasure to exchange with all these experts on coming from so many parts of the world. I hope that Africa has been enlightened in such a fundamental topic. And as I said, we need to remain optimistic. Whether it takes 10 years, 20, 60, 100 years, it's good to start somewhere. And I think this country, they are standing as a good example that many have to follow. And I think I can see a smile on the lips of youth, of our wonderful youth that is all over Africa. More than 50% of our populations are made of these youth that have nowhere to go. Now they can hope that something is coming, and something will definitely come.
There's light, of course, at the end of the tunnel, and the Alliance of Sahel States, of course, seems to be the way to go. Thank you very much, viewers of Afrique Media. Thank you to have been there on the program. We very much appreciate the discussions. Of course, it's going to continue. We shall be here again next week to discuss more. Kikilome Shodeko, special thanks to you. You were the only lady on the panel this afternoon. We appreciate you for always being there and accepting our invitation. And wishing everyone a happy new year in advance. And until then, we will meet again. Thank you, and thanks to our technician as well for doing a wonderful job. Bye-bye for now. Yeah.